Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 1% Healthier podcast. Today, I am joined by Timothy Bolen, and I'm going to read to you his whole bio so that way you guys can understand the level of legend that we're going to be learning from today on running and how to get
Wow.
better. So excited. I met Tim when I lived in Arizona, and he has track workouts that he does for the community, and really loved his coaching style and the energy that those workouts brought. So I thought that for everybody that is wanting to get better at running, to improve their endurance, and wanting to train for HYROX and for half marathons and everything, that this would be a great podcast to learn from. So let me introduce you guys to Tim. Tim was born in Michigan, then moved to Alaska for his freshman through junior year of high school, then moved back to Michigan alone his senior year, hoping to earn a running scholarship. Tim attended Eastern Michigan University and did get that full scholarship. Tim then competed as a semi professional runner for 2 years until he earned his pro card for triathlon in 1989. Tim raced 4 years as a professional triathlete, competing every year at the Ironman World Championships. Tim stacked up 10 All American status awards over his triathlon career. Tim was offered the opportunity to race on the semi-pro cycling team for Volkswagen Trek Landis Cyclery, and he competed as a Category 1 cyclist for over 6 years throughout the U.S. at the largest cycling events. Tim also raced on the Landis Elite Running and Triathlon team for over 5 years, racking up a 2:18 marathon, a 1:07 half marathon, sub 30 10K, sub 15-minute 5K, and a 4:07 mile PR. Tim's greatest accomplishment, however, wasn't until May of 2017 when he created and founded the Tempe-based nonprofit Together We Live, a nonprofit that serves individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities by pairing them with athletes without disabilities, all to have the same opportunity to participate in running and multi-sport events, to cross the finish line of a 5K, 10K marathon, or even Ironman triathlon. The team also competes in cycling events. Tim's most challenging athletic achievement is the finish of an Ironman California in 2024 while towing, pulling, and pushing Patrick Canez, who has cerebral palsy, finishing in 15 hours and 48 minutes. In January 2020, Tim had to face the hardest challenge of his life when he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. While undergoing regular chemo treatments and nonstop doctor's appointments, Tim was determined to not only continue his work with Together We Live, but to see its growth, visibility, and awareness for all those with disabilities, as well as expand his coaching business, Excel and Beyond Coaching, that focuses mostly on endurance events. In summary, he created Excel and Beyond Coaching in 1996, became Arizona's largest coaching business in 2008, created Together We Live May of 2017, diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in January 2020, finished Ironman California with Team Patrick in October 2024 while fighting cancer nearly 4 years. Now, currently, Tim attributes his success with his terminal cancer battle because of his running. When he can't run, he doesn't feel as though he's fighting back, so he runs as much as physically possible. Because of running, he's now over 6 years fighting and thriving still. Running is literally saving his life day by day. So, Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Ah, good job. Excellent.
Thank you.
That like
Uh,
brings tears to my eyes. So pretty cool to hear that.
I was reading it earlier today when I was preparing it more, and it honestly brought tears to my eyes as well, just to think about one, how much you've done and how much you've impacted other people and the business that you are creating and the life that you're living. So, thank you so much for being here and being the inspiration that you are.
No, thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be invited. You go your whole life trying to build some type of legacy, and this is all just part of that legacy. And so I thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are also ambitious, that they have careers and they have businesses that they want to grow while also wanting to get better at their fitness and the things that they push themselves in. And I feel like you are a star example of that while building your business and pursuing fitness goals and wanting to make an impact with that. Do you have any advice for those that are wanting to be more and do more and leave a legacy both with their fitness and with their careers?
Yeah, I this is probably the number one thing that I tell people all the time is if it's important to you, you always find a way. It's just that simple. Like there's tons of excuses that we can make throughout our life, right? And the question is like if it's really truly important to you, you won't let the excuses outwin, right? So that would be my biggest thing is really do a physical check on yourself and mental check on yourself and say, truly, if this is really what I desire, then why am I not doing it? You
Mm,
can always find a way. Always.
mm. That's so
Yeah,
true. And it's very simple too. If you really, really want it, you can make the time. And sometimes it's requires uncomfortable sacrifices, but at the end of the day, if you want it, you can do it.
that's it. That's it. 100%.
And
Yeah.
And throughout your journey of one business, but also of running and with having receiving your cancer diagnosis a few years ago, what has helped you stay so positive? Because I think that that's one of the best qualities that people can have is the ability to choose their attitude and choose how they see the world despite what's going on or despite what's like impacting them. How do you stay so positive? Because I feel like you have that energy of like always smiling and having good energy. What is it about you, or like what do you think about that makes you so positive?
Yeah. I think I've always been um, extremely grateful for the way that my life has kind of panned out. And, when I was growing up and facing some pretty hard situations, you really start to question really what's in store in your future. And to be able to look back on that now and know that I was willing to make a lot of sacrifices and to suffer through some really hard circumstances, but to really come out on the other side with everything that I ever dreamed of is, I mean, I'm not wealthy, let's get real, but what I am is my heart is full every single day. And that brings me so much joy that the money it's enough to sustain it, and I can do the things that I want to do. I mean, I just got back from Ironman Texas and spent a week there, 2 days on the ocean, and it's great. But really, ideally, it's all about just being so extremely grateful for where I am with my own life, and not only for the opportunities given to me from other people, but primarily looking back and saying, wow, I've made some really, really hard choices and I came out on the other side better than I expected. So that's probably the biggest blessing for me. So that just really just makes me a happy person. I could have gone down this path of this pity party and feeling sorry for myself when I got diagnosed with cancer. And I just chose to say, you know what? I'm still here. I'm still able to run every day. And as long as I can still do that, I'm still going to be extremely grateful for that. And the day that I can't run anymore, I'll be hiking out on the trails. And the day I can't hike out on the trails, I'll be doing sit ups on the floor. There's always going to be something to be grateful for. So I think that's where I live.
Hmm. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And coming out
Yeah.
the other side, positive and grateful. Gratitude goes a really long way. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to spend like the remainder of our podcast talking about how we can improve our running because you are fast, you are so smart, and you have so much experience in coaching. And so I wanted to talk about in the first block, like the running fundamentals if we are trying to take running more seriously and we're wanting to get better. Because I used to think that when we run, that we just go out and we run for a little bit and then we come back and just like the same pace or just trying to run fast, and I didn't
Yeah.
understand that there was like so much strategy behind the sport. So would love to hear about the different kinds of running and the purpose behind each of those, the what the purpose of tempo runs are, what they are, threshold runs, interval runs, the purpose of long runs. I don't know if there's like a specific order we should tackle them in, but yeah, would love to
Yeah.
learn the purpose behind those.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can tell you right now that probably the number one mistake people make is they don't do even the zone two, the easy runs, the base runs. They don't do those right. I'll explain that. Is I do a lot of VO2 testing. I bought a machine years and years ago and have been just getting upgrade versions since then because I just really feel it's important to know your proper numbers as you approach whatever goal it is that you have. So my first recommendation before I talk about the zones is make sure you get the science part of it done, whether that's through lactate testing, through the blood testing, or through VO2 testing. It's just so vital to have those accurate numbers so then they can build, or you can build where you feel that your zones are going to fall in. A lot of the programs will just pump them out for you. I personally kind of write through diagrams of where I see exactly where each heartbeat falls. And I can specifically say when you hit your anaerobic threshold, it's going to be at 148 and specifically at 148, right? Or
Mm.
when you're at your aerobic threshold, I can tell you you're at 132, right? And having that data is so important. And this is why, because when you're told that, hey, you need to go out and do a 2 hour base run, right? It's got to be super easy, just base, just get the miles in, muscle development, oxygen development. What happens is a lot of times, if you're, say, your base threshold is 132, right? At 133, your body now is starting to feel a hint of lactic acid, right? And as you start accumulating more lactic acid, that's obviously where you hit your anaerobic threshold. The
Mhm.
problem is people pass that 130 mark, 132 mark. They'll jump up a couple of times into that 133, 134, 135 range. And the way that the brain works and the way that the lungs and the body works is as soon as you hit lactic acid, your lungs get restricted and they come in and just say, oh, shoot, there's something that's restricting my oxygen flow. And your brain sends a message and your lungs start to contract because they want to pump harder so they can move more. Where if you stay at 132 and under, your heart says, okay, I'm good. Your lungs say, I'm great. And they just keep expanded and they keep growing and growing and growing. Hence, that's where you get your aerobic fitness from, right? That's where the biggest advantage comes. So when people say we need to spend 80% in our aerobic zones, that means you need to be in your true aerobic zone. That's it. Because as soon as you defunk that, you're defunking basically your whole run, if that's the purpose of that run, right? There's a lot of different reasons that we do runs with different methods. But for me, I'm always like, if I'm going to go out and I have just a zone 2, super easy. I don't look at pace. I could care less how fast I'm running. All I want to do is spend time on my feet and make sure that I'm sitting in my aerobic zone so I can build not only muscle, but my aerobic capacity. And that should be the goal for everybody, right? Better
Mhm.
aerobic capacity means that when we start increasing our lactate threshold, that means our aerobic capacity is so expanded that we can actually keep pushing that up, which means that we can actually run harder for longer, right? If you
Right.
Yeah. So if you defunk your aerobic training and do that wrong, then you're never really going to get the true advantages of all the rest of the zones. So that would be
Mhm.
my very first key. And I can tell you, I've coached a lot of elite athletes all the way down to the bare bone beginner. And I've seen it time and time again where I can look at their training peaks and look at their heart rate zones and see, oh, mile 3, she went over it. She completely defunked that base run. That was, I mean, she hurt herself on that. Kudos to her for getting the miles done, but she did it wrong, right? So that would be my very first recommendation is if you really do want to get a pure aerobic run in, make sure that you just stand under those numbers. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. So if you're going out for an easy run, the biggest thing then is to not go over that your aerobic capacity zone because then you are going into a different heart rate zone, which is a different training purpose, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it boils down to basically lactic acid, right? So
Yeah.
as soon as lactic acid is starting to affect the body, of course, then everything else is going to be affected with it, right? So I'm always like, just stay safe. Even if you run 15 seconds slower than what you normally do, so you can stay aerobic, the benefits in the long run are going to be 10 times more than if you try to keep nudging it up and then come back down and nudge it up and then come back down and you're in your aerobic run, right?
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
you're just hurting yourself in the end. So yeah, so that's probably the biggest thing. And that I can tell you too, like don't get so caught up. You look at Kenyans when they have their just pure aerobic base runs, their long endurance runs that are their basically their base runs. They're not easy runs, but they're their base runs. They're running, 8:30s, 9-minute miles. And for them, who race at 4:30 pace, that's like a crawl, right? But
Yeah.
but that's where their happy spot is. And you be damned if you don't think they do a lot of training there. They do. And you can read the science. And I think one of the biggest things that I take away from it is they say that for people that want to get faster, specifically for even if you do say a half marathon or a marathon or greater, your best bet is to log a ton of miles under your base zone, right? And limit how much speed and threshold work that you do in that, because the benefits that you'll get on the outside outweigh those that try to limit their mileage but do more speed work.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
and science shows it. They've done a case study of 100 elite runners and followed them a duration of a few years, some Kenyans, some Americans, and they found that those that ran 70 miles saw less improvement than those that ran 100 miles plus, but ran at a much easier effort. So that should, I mean, if you're looking at the world's best, you got to look at the model and say, oh, okay, that is effective. Now, am I telling people to go out and run 100 miles? No, I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying, when it comes to the science part of it, don't cheat yourself and think that in order to get faster, that you have to just always run fast, because that's not going to be the end game for you.
Right. Yeah, there's a time and a place to running fast. And if you only do like fast effort paces, then you're like you said earlier, like you're cheating yourself on building that aerobic capacity. So that's really good to know because out of all the runs that you do throughout the week, how much of that running should be in the aerobic zone? Or maybe we'll
Yeah.
get into that later, but
Yeah. I mean, I can really touch on it. It really boils down to, like, you should be having, if it's structured right, you should be having phases in your training based on what your goal is in 4 months from now, right? So like you might be through phase 1 and 2 is going to be all of your build, right? So you're going to probably limit how much of the speed work, the threshold work that you do in the first two, because you're basically building up through that. Once you get through your phase 2, phase 3 starts incorporating more of your threshold work with like little sprinkles of speed in there. And you get through that phase. Some phases are 4 weeks long, some are 6 weeks long. Again, the sky's the limit. It could depend on who the coach is. It depends on different coaches' philosophies. But I've always kind of used the 4 to 6 month or week range. It always seems to be the happy place in the end. And then when it comes to really just dialing in your specific speed work going into your A race, you want to use that as your last phase. And that phase is only 3 weeks. So, you're not looking at a lot of time with a lot of high intensity, but I always try to explain that the higher the intensity that you give, once you start to leave that aerobic base zone, you're increasing the chance of injury and risk of injury by 60% just by leaving your aerobic zones, right? So it's just something to keep in mind. Like if you're one of those people that say, I want to run every day, then just make sure that you're cognizant of saying, okay, I'm going to make sure that I stay in my base zone just so I can stay healthy and keep running. Because as soon as you start flirting in those other zones, you just increase risk. And of course, as we try to progress with the speed, then we also progress with risks of getting injured. And those just keep increasing higher and higher. So I think that's important to note.
100%, which is so helpful because we always hear about like it's so important to run your easy runs easy, but I don't think we understand the weight of why that is so important. Like one to keep
Yeah.
injury, but two, like you're actually giving your body the capacity to build rather than trying to rush the process and not really getting anywhere. So that is
Yeah.
very helpful.
Awesome. Okay, so then your next phase would be basically I guess it could depend. Some people use all the way up to 7 zones. Some people use 4 zones. Some people use 5 zones. 5 zones seems to be the standard these days. Some use 7 because based on basically their fifth, sixth, and seventh are what I would call is just my fifth zone, but it's
Okay.
broken into parts, right? So it's say that it's 180 to 185, is going to be the start of your zone 5. And you could sit in that and do 2 minutes of interval work there, where maybe 185 to 190, you could do 30 seconds, and 190 to 195 to your max, you might be able to do 10 seconds.
Got it.
Right. So they're different reasons and different resources that you can still use depending on what you do. HYROX is a great example of that, honestly, because HYROX is such explosive, fast power stuff that the more that you can work and focus on that stuff, the faster you can get through those movements and then get into your runs, right? And get that run done. And then hopefully let that heart rate come back down during that run. So then you can get back in and explode again. So yeah, your next zone, which I would call my zone 3, right? Because my zone 2 is my aerobic. My zone 1 is basically my recovery, walking, whatever. Zone 3 would be more of basically my tempo. And then it also reaches up to your anaerobic threshold. So typically your zone 3 would fall between the 80 to 90 mark. And then your zone 4 would fall between 90 to 100% if you did a 4 zone. So it's kind of easier to follow it that way.
Got it. Which
Yeah.
is 80 to 90% of your max heart rate.
Yep. Yep. You got it. If you just looked at if you looked at your anaerobic numbers or your lactate threshold, then you would basically say 85 to 90% of your lactate numbers. And actually, some people can say they can go up to 100% based on that too. But I just like to use the max because it's easier to calculate. And most of us can figure that out of where we're going to be if you do the 220 minus age, whatever that calculation is, right? That's just, I mean, it's a good rough estimate, gives you a good ballpark of what you're supposed to be at, but it's easier to figure. So advantages of what you would use your tempo runs for. Now, this would be key for half marathons, longer runs. I love tempo runs. I'm a huge advocate of that because, again, it's just slightly over your base. It's not hard enough that you're going to increase risk so much that you're still going to be able to recover and minimize the risk. And so I love tempo runs, and I usually try to incorporate those when I start gearing up for bigger races. I'll start incorporating those 2 months out and just really start zoning in on those. And they can be anywhere from a 20-minute solid half marathon tempo to it could be up to a 3 hour just race focused tempo run, right? And just nail it from there. So those can be any distance, anytime, because you're so far still, you're underneath your anaerobic. That's really what tempo is that you're staying underneath your anaerobic. You're above your endurance, your base zone. So you're going to be sandwiched right somewhere in between there. So you're comfortable enough to move enough lactic acid buildup and that it can still feed on itself and flush out, right? So you can get comfortable with the accumulation of lactic acid, but yet you can still sustain it and still run, right? And that's important because, as we know, when we get tired in half marathons or marathons, the very first thing that happens is that lactic acid starts to build up so much that our legs become like lead and our lungs start to labor a little, and you're like, oh wow, I'm starting to feel this now. And with the tempo runs being slightly easier off of that anaerobic, you can sustain those. And if you can't sustain those, then that tells me that you probably need to figure out how to maybe come down 2 or 3 heartbeats and find that happy spot and then stick that for your next tempo run. And the goal should be on your tempo runs is they should be the same pace throughout. That should always be your goal on your tempo runs. You don't want these yo-yo effects because that's no longer going to be a tempo run, right? That's going to be a mixed run where you're doing intervals of tempo with your base training, right? Or intervals of tempo with like we do at track all the time. We'll do tempo runs, but then we also do a lot of anaerobic included in the track work. And then we go back to recovery, right? That's what a lot of our track work is. So tempo runs for me, like I will do when I'm really focusing in on my half marathons or my marathons, I will specifically set, okay, first 2 miles are going to be base, easy warm up. And then mile three is what my goal pace is for my race. I will run 10 seconds slower off of that just so it feels comfortable for me, maybe 15 seconds. And then I stick that for the whole run. That's the goal, is just nail that. And if I can't hold that throughout and I'm falling off, then that tells me that's still too aggressive for me. And that's a big message of saying I'm not prepared to hold that pace. So then the next time I do that, which would be 2 weeks later. So with my marathon training, I will do one just pure endurance base run, which again, I'm not keyed in on pacing or speed or anything else. I'm just really zoning in on that zone two, making sure I'm doing nothing but aerobic running. That's it. And I really focus on that. And then on the next run, it's more a very race focused run. So it can be a solid tempo run, or if there's mixed in hills that I know that some runs will have mixed in hills, then I will try to replicate that and incorporate that in the run. But the goal is to stick the mile paces, no matter what. No matter what the terrain is, just always try to hold those even splits. So what that
Got
means is if you are on an uphill, right, that doesn't mean to try to run up that hill at your, for example, at your 6 minute pace, right? That
it.
means that means you're going to probably want to back off to a 6:15, 6:20 to still stay in your tempo zone, right?
Okay.
Tempo area. And then when you crest over that, that means you can drive down that hill again, because obviously it's easier and you can run a lot faster and still stay in that tempo zone. So, yes, you might lose time going up, but you're going to make it right back up, going right back down. Right. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a really good key for people. And I think that's really important too. For probably the number one mistake is people push hills way too hard going up, and they think they need to sustain their pace on these climbs, and I'm telling you, it'll wear you in the end, and it's not worth it. Where you're trying to save 10 seconds going up a hill right now, you're going to lose 2 minutes at the end of your race. So
Hmm.
my always my advice to all my runners is just back off a little bit on the uphills, make sure that it still feels like it's comfortable for you, and then when you get over it, then punch it, right? Enjoy
Yeah.
it, let the downhill work for you. So that's pretty much the tempo run. And the advantages again is that you're trying to move the lactic acid and have your body get adapted to working with the lactic acid, that it can flush out fast enough that you can still sustain your pace. And if you can't, then that's the message of telling yourself, okay, next run, I need to back off just a little bit. And then I'll
Hmm.
try to hold that one for the next run.
Got it. So I feel like the tempo is really nailing down sustainability of your pace. And it sounds like you're wanting to run at your race pace and see if you can maintain that, and it should be sustainable rather than burning out too quickly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel
Perfect.
like this morning I was doing a tempo run, but I noticed that I was able to do like the first two rounds of tempo fast or like at a 7:20 minute pace, but on like the next couple rounds, like I couldn't sustain it. So maybe that wasn't even tempo because I couldn't sustain it. I had to go down to 7:50. So
Yeah. Yep.
okay, there we go. I was not doing
Yep.
tempo
There you go. Chances are your heart rate probably screamed up a little bit closer to your anaerobic, where you were building too much lactic acid, and the body just says it's too much store. I can't hold and sustain that anymore. Like I need
run.
time to let that flush out. So that's typically why we slow down, because you just can't move it fast enough.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's good to know because I think that I was running faster than what my goal half marathon pace would be anyway. So that's
Yeah.
and can the tempo runs be should they be like the entire hour at that same pace, or would you break it up into like a 20-minute tempo and then like a float and another 20-minute, or is there a good way to structure those runs, or does it really just depend?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the phases that you're in. So
Mm.
basically, like I said, your phase 1 and 2 is going to be a lot of just your endurance base work that you're doing, but you are sprinkling in tempo run to let your body start working on some lactic acid. That would be the time where I would say do the 20, 20, 20, whatever you want, just because that's the early phases. Your goal is that you want to be able to really try to work up to whatever your goal time would be for your half. If it's a 150, a 2 hour, whatever that is, right? You want to try to work up to that time, being able to hold that tempo pace.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All
Okay.
right. So again, that's probably when it comes to really race focus work, that's the sweet spot for race focus work. But again, you need to really limit how much time that you're spending doing that, because you're increasing the risk again of injuries, and everybody hates injuries. So when in doubt, I always say, when in doubt, leave it out. Like if you ever question in the morning, you feel something that's not right, or there's like a twinge somewhere, don't risk it. Don't risk it. Leave it out. Go roll, go stretch, go do whatever you got to do. Find an alternate workout for the day, but don't risk it. And I'm not saying not to go run. And if it's 3 days, you still feel that, then you probably really need to get an answer of what's going on there, right? Figure that out too. But I'm just so keen on, like, if I feel like something's not right, I'm just not going to risk it. Like, there's days I feel mentally and sometimes physically with the cancer where I don't want to get out the door and run, but I do it anyways, because I know at the end of the run, I'm going to feel like shit, I won this day, and
Yes.
that's okay, because I'm not really necessarily dealing with an injury part of it. Right.
Yeah.
So it's the injury parts that I'm really keen on telling people, just be really careful. Like, don't mess with it. Don't risk it. It's just not worth it. Like, an extra 24 hours can do miracles if you question that you might be getting hurt, right?
Mm.
And then you just really focus on icing yourself, ibuprofen the heck out of yourself, and just roll, 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 and stretch, right? Those are the keys. And, obviously the massage guns are good as well. But yeah, I just don't risk it. I've been very fortunate to go the last, gosh, 2 or 3 years really without any type of serious injuries. Like, I have some little flare ups of things here and there. I had a knee replacement done, so I get little weird muscle reactions that happen from the tendons that run over the new implant. And so I have to listen to myself on those too. But if I have to take a day off, it's typically because of something like that, not because I'm injured, which is, knock on wood, really good. So now, anaerobic, let's go. Now you're talking why you come to track on Wednesdays, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think the main function, the main purpose people should know isn't that you're just running faster in your anaerobic zone. You are. I hope that you are. But that shouldn't be the focus that you're doing it. Your focus should be that the goal is that you're trying to train your body how, again, to move the lactic acid so that you can run at a faster, harder pace and still sustain that pace and still be able to flush the lactic acid out as fast as it's produced, right? That's what anaerobic training does for you. If you do anaerobic training right, when you first start anaerobic training, I would say that you could probably sustain it for 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. But if you do the training right, you can sustain it all the way up to 50 to 60 minutes. And that's huge, because when you look at, if you're doing a half marathon, that could be over half the marathon pace that you're running at anaerobic. And if you train your body right to flush that lactic acid, that is a PR baby all day long, right? And that really should be the ultimate goal for everybody, is that you want to keep wanting to nudge that heart rate up high enough that you can sustain it. And then when you feel like it's not going to be sustainable, you come down a couple beats and you're able to flush all that lactic acid. And then you can come back up and hit it again, right? And then come back down again. And that's what track workouts for us. That's what I try to train the body to do, is bring it up over anaerobic, right? So we're nudging that threshold, making you run for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, sometimes 4 minutes, right? at a time. And then all of a sudden you get a nice, really short recovery. And then nudge it again, right? And nudge it again. And the goal is that in that time and in that process, if done well and done enough, that your body finally says, oh wow, like I can adapt to this lactic acid, like I can actually move this lactic acid out now. And it, your body learns and adapts to work from using your slow twitch fibers, right, which is basically your endurance base and some of your threshold runs, tempo runs, and then all of a sudden doing your fast twitch, which would be your anaerobic and above runs, all of a sudden saying, oh, okay, so now my fast twitch fibers can now adapt to the lactic acid, where we no longer need the slow twitch, which then makes you a faster runner, right? Because now you're running off the fast twitch fibers. So that's the goal of the anaerobic work. So it's not the VO2 max work. It's literally trying to adapt to the stress that your body's going under. And a lot of times, if you know exactly what that heart rate is, I will put some workouts in where it's not even an anaerobic or an FTP, as some of them say. I think I'll put a 40K time trial for a cycling event, for example. This is just an example. And if their heart rate's 144 at threshold right there, I'll nail them at a 141 to a 143 and never let them hit 144. But it's so close that they're accumulating still so much lactic acid that they're still having to try to flush that, but yet still sustain that effort through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and do that for more than 50 or 60 seconds that you would only be able to sustain if you were over your anaerobic, right? So there's different ways to train that. That would be applied to the same thing when it comes to doing these really hard runs and trying to race pace at threshold. If you run just under your threshold and stick it underneath your threshold, you're going to hold that run a lot longer and a lot more even than if all of a sudden you nudge over that threshold. You're just going to build more, and you're only going to be able to sustain it for a period, and then you're going to have to slow down, let it flush, go again, right? So those are two different training modules that you could use really for adaptation and getting faster.
So, what would be an example of an anaerobic running workout? Would that be like the 800 meters around a track, 400 meters around a track, more so sprint work, or what would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's going to be all of those things, but an anaerobic can also be all the way up to a 10K. I mean, and
Oh,
depending
okay.
on, yeah, and depending on really how fast of a runner you are. I mean, there's some, these people running half marathons in an hour now, like they can hold that for the entire half marathon, right?
That's true.
It's nuts, but so it really just kind of depends on what your fitness level is and where you're at physically. But I would say a golden rule is if you're just starting out to work with your anaerobic area, I would say target 30 minutes in your head and say that'll be where I could run. I can hold that for 30 minutes. And if you can see that your pace is staying even splits through that, then you're probably doing that right. And if they're dropping and yo-yoing back and forth, then you need to probably come back a little bit, um,
Okay.
to try to hold that and sustain that. Now, if your goal is to try to train your body to move more lactic acid over your anaerobic threshold, then you would do like you did, right? With the miles of saying, okay, I'm going to run a 710, 710, 710 until I can't run 710s anymore. And then try to train my body to still try to hold on to 710s. But if you can't, and I'm still running 740s, 750s, whatever that looks like for you, you're still training your body how to move that lactic acid. Does
Got
that
it.
make
Yeah.
sense? But I would say golden rule is probably 30 minutes at first. You could target just a straight out anaerobic run and just try to target that and see what that would be. And that would be a really good idea of what you might be able to run a 10K in. And then, chances are you're going to be, if you do your 5Ks right, you're going to be over your anaerobic the whole entire race anyways. But the question is how quickly your body can move that lactic acid is how fast you can run that 5K, because it's still going to be for a lot of people, it'll still be under a 30-minute window, right?
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know because that was going to be my next question is how do you find or decide what your 5K or 10K pace should be? So your 5K pace should be the anaerobic where you're really pushing yourself hard, but still able to say sustain, but it's a lot harder than your zone 3 runs, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's still in your zone three, but you're looking at, so 80 to 85 is going to be your tempo, and then 86 to 90 is going to be your anaerobic work. So you're going to be that 86 and above. If you're really targeting trying to sustain just one thing and know that you're still going to be anaerobic, just I would say 86 and stick there and hold it. Don't flirt up into the 87, 80, 89, because you're going to build lactic acid so much quicker that you're not going to be able to still even run anaerobically, right?
Yeah.
So that, again, this is why it's so important to know these numbers so you understand it. Some of the Garmin watches, I'll be very honest and say, are pretty close to what they calculate as saying what your thresholds are at. Some of them are pretty close. I mean, that if you didn't do the test, then I would say trust the Garmin watch. It'll give you a rough estimate of what that looks like for you. And if it says, your anaerobic threshold is, 132, then I would just say, okay, that's what I'll try on this next run. And if you can't hold that, then you know that that's not perfectly accurate, right?
Yeah.
But I would say that's a good rule if you haven't done the testing. But I mean, you can get VO2 testing done for probably 75 to $100 if you look around now. I don't really know what blood work. I think it's typically $150. It's typically twice as much as the VO2 testing is, but it is better science and more accurate data because it's measurable in blood, right? So they can look at it under a microscope versus, just moving air and sensors that sense what's in the air. They say is not as scientific as it is with blood. But personally, I mean, one is the same as the other. So I would say save your money. Like if you're just starting out, just wanting to get serious about this, go get a VO2 test. It's really going to give you some really concrete numbers that you need to work with. And then if all of a sudden you feel like you want to be a gold champion and win races and whatnot, then yeah, then go get the blood work done. Spend a little more money on it, but otherwise, don't waste the money on that.
Cool. That's good to know. I did a VO2 max test in college, but I want to do one again because it's been a long time. Now I just
Yeah.
want my Garmin to tell me what
Uh
it is.
huh.
So,
Yeah, yeah, I know. I know. Garmin's are pretty close. I mean, I have so many athletes where I'll do their testing, and the one thing that Garmin isn't really good at is kind of telling you where your aerobic threshold is, and then where your numbers start to fall in with your lactic buildup between your anaerobic and your aerobic, and that's really important because as you're starting to really train more serious for races and you see like where these specific numbers start to fall, it's really easy to say, okay, she needs to run at this heart rate, which is, going to be related to X and X pace, and just hold that for this run. And the goal is over 6 weeks of training, we hope that at your aerobic pace, if you say we started at 8 minute, right, and your zone 2 at 8 pace, then your goal in 6 weeks is that you should now be running at the exact same heart rate with the exact same effort as 745,
mm,
right?
hmm.
That's the goal because your body just becomes more economical, more efficient, has better blood flow, more oxygen supply, and you're just more conditioned, right? So ideally you should see improvements in that as well. So that's one of the first markers that I look at if we're on track, because if I see that they're still at 8 flat and 6 weeks later they haven't improved at all on that, then the question is what are we doing wrong? How come we're not seeing the improvement in there? So you got to look at that as well.
Mm. Are there any benchmark workouts that you like to use to see improvement, like a mile test or aside from the VO2 max testing?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's go do a race, like go do a 5K. That's probably the best benchmark. Even if you're just starting out and you just want to get a base, I just say go have fun. Sign up for a small little 5K and go after it, and then see where you fall. Like if it's 21 minutes, if it's 28 minutes, if it's 30 minutes, whatever it is, that's your base. Like now you know that's where you capped at that race. That was all effort, right? What was your average pace through that, right? What was your average heart rate through that? Chances are you know that that's the top of your ceiling. So now from there, we know where we can start to come back down to run comfortably and the zones that we need to start nudging to get up faster than that 5K pace that you just ran. So, yeah, I would say that's probably the best marker. You would probably want to do, you could do a 1 mile test if you wanted, but I don't know if that's going to be as accurate as trying to do a 5K because a 5K is a longer duration of period where you have to move the lactic acid for a longer period. Where a mile, I feel like, is just so short for some people, they can do it under 8 minutes.
Hmm.
It's not a long enough period to get a good measure for what you should sustain on a 5K and above race.
Yeah. Okay. That's really good to know. Because, yeah, that would demand more than just a 1 mile test. So that's cool.
Yeah. And then I also like to encourage, for you, example, if you're trying to really gear in for a half marathon, I would encourage finding 2 10Ks in between there that you could really target and say 1 10K, I'm going to target just at threshold and see if I can hold that threshold for that entire race. And then your next 10K, you should be really focusing on, okay, what is my half marathon goal pace? And can I just hold that for this whole 10K? Right? I'm hoping that your first one is going to be harder than your second one, if that makes sense, right? Because you're running at your anaerobic threshold on your first one. And we know in our head, if we're just really starting to focus in, we got 30 minutes, sometimes stretch to 40, right? Unless you're a really good elite runner, then you can get 50 to 60. But I would say that that's going to be harder than if you're focusing on your half, because we know that you can't sustain that for the half.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And to continue on the same topic of training for a half, my half is, I think, it's June 6th. So it's coming up. When we're preparing for an actual race, I feel like there's a difference that I've learned between trying to run a half marathon versus racing a half marathon. Do you feel like there's a different mindset behind and a different strategy behind that if you're like really trying to go out and hit a PR versus just to go do it?
It's so funny. I think this is great. That's a great, great question. I I literally just had that conversation at track this morning at the start of track because we had 3 athletes that just competed at the Boston Marathon, and
Wow.
we had two that are getting ready to compete in the London Marathon this coming weekend. And my question was, did you hit your goal? And, two of them said, well, yeah, it was just to have fun. It was great. It was all right. That was our goal. And then of course I asked the two girls about the London. So what's your goal? Are you excited? You're gonna go hit your goals? So they're like, oh, we're just going to have fun together. Right. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like we have no goals, we have no expectations on all the hard training you just put in. You have no goal. Right. And I guess if that's your ambition, then yeah, there's no stress, right? Because there's no expectation. So I would say mentally that's going to be way easier to process, even if it is your first one, because you have no expectation on what you're going to finish. It's easy, right? You could walk as much as you wanted because there's no expectation in there, right? Now, if
Hmm.
they would have said, "Yeah, I have a goal of running 26 miles and I don't want to walk any of it," that's at least a goal, you know. We just want to have fun. I was like, "Oh my God, you guys are killing me right now. You're just killing me right now." Oh, yeah. But I love specific goals. I love markers along the way. Like, I think a good rule and a goal is yes, have a set finish time that you want, but you'll know halfway through if you're not going to make it, then have your plan B and be okay with that because that's racing. Of the hundreds of marathons that I've done over the years, I can tell you on two hands how many probably went exactly according to plan, right? It's
Hmm.
just there's so much margin of error and the body reacting differently and lack of sleep, stress in your life that's happening, right? Relationships, whatever it is. There's just too many things that can affect those that, you know, I think just having a really good goal in mind is key. And it'll keep you on track when it comes through training, opposed to, oh yeah, we're just gonna have fun. We're gonna go run 20 miles this weekend. Just go have fun, right? In your
Yeah.
training. That's not gonna work for me. Like I need to know what I need to go out my first 5 miles, 10 miles, 15, and my last five where those need to be. That's what I need to do because that's how my brain processes it. It's, oh, I just need to go run fun. That doesn't work for me. Like there's times and places for that, but I just think if you're really serious and you have, all the time to invest into this and you really want to go after something, then don't cheat yourself and just say you want to have fun. Like
Right.
have a goal, know what you want to do, right? And then test yourself and force yourself to be ready for that. So that's
1000% agree with that. Yeah, like have a goal. And I think, like you said, there's a time in the season for just wanting to have fun. But if you really are wanting to do something or like go and do a race you've never done before, or especially like
yeah,
traveling to London for the marathon, I think that like I would really want to know what paces I should be hitting, know how hard I should be pushing myself, know how or how I would want it to like feel or like the zones that I should be in. Like I just like you, I would like my brain to focus on different things so I can execute. Or like if I'm hitting those long runs, I want to know where I should be at versus just going through the motions. Like I would love to
yeah,
be more intentional about training it and the race.
yeah. I think that is the perfect word. Be intentional with everything that you do through your training, right? Have an intention, why you're going out that door in the morning and what the intention is for that run, right? Instead of I'm going to go have fun, right?
Yeah.
There's intention in that, but what's the measurement on that? Like how do you measure having fun? Like do you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like
Yes.
for me, that's the stuff that just drives me nuts. I don't like, why would you spend hundreds of hours if you've been training for 6 months for a marathon and then just say, yeah, I'm going to go have fun? Well, why did you do that? Like you could go run 13 of it and walk the last 13 and still have a blast, right? Actually, probably more fun because you could engage more the second half of the marathon.
Yeah.
Whereas you're walking by and high-fiving everyone.
It's so
But
true.
I know. I can't, my brain can't process that stuff. I don't understand that part of it. But, I'm not saying that I don't have fun when I race because I have a blast when I'm racing. I
Mm.
raced with my girlfriend in Ironman Texas this weekend. And is it my race pace that I normally do? No, but you'd be damned if you didn't see me out high-fiving and saying hi and peacing all the photographers out there and thanking all the law enforcement. Like I had a blast, but we also had a very specific goal that we were going to hit for the day, and we were within 10 minutes and an Ironman of that goal. That's really good.
That
So
is really good.
yeah, so I'm super proud of that. But yeah, I don't know. It's not how my brain works.
So this is my first half marathon and I'm like, okay, does that mean like I should be going out for like running the same pace, like my goal marathon pace the whole time? Or do you start at a pace and then ease into it and get faster? Is there a strategy behind that? Or
Yeah. So the negative split runs, those are my favorites. Those are literally my favorite runs, the negative split runs. So yeah, I mean, those are going to be all part of your mix of your tempo and your anaerobic. So that's what that is, hopefully you're going to start at a solid tempo and then slowly work your way into sub anaerobic. So you're
hmm,
pushing the anaerobic that last mile or 2 miles where you just can't sustain it anymore, right? That's
cool.
the goal of the negative split runs, and I freaking love them. Like
Yeah.
I love those. I do a lot of my last phase training, that those last 6 weeks that I put in there will be a lot of negative split runs. And at track, that's why I'm always throwing in negative splits, negative split, negative split. The more that we can train our body to run faster as it produces more fatigue, the more that the brain starts to say, oh, I can sustain this pace. Oh, I can manage this. Oh, shoot, I can already go back to that first one. That's going to be so much easier than this last one was, right? But yet it was still fast, that first one, right?
True.
It's,
Yes.
it's just how the brain processes that. Like, oh, okay, I get to back off again on mile 13 to where I was back on mile 2 or 3, right?
Yeah.
Even though that was still fast. So, yeah, I'm a huge advocate on that. I would say that negative split runs are really good. Block miles are really good. So, you would say that you're going to run just sub anaerobic for 4 miles and then aerobic for 4 miles. And then I always say 2 or 3 beats faster than your last mile off that second 4 miles, and then see if you can hold that for 4 miles. That's
Okay.
a really good block. I call those block runs, and I love those. Those are so important because if you can't hold those last four, then you kind of know what that threshold is and where you can flirt with, and that's in training. That should be where you're going to keep flirting to keep trying again, trying to nudge that, nudge that, nudge that, right? Um,
Right.
but yeah, I love those runs. I love doing fartlek runs. Those are probably some of my favorite. Well, just go out for a 3 hour run and then I'll throw in, 8 or 10 3 minute fartleks where it'll be sub race pace goal and then do maybe 3 minute rests and then just hit those in the middle of that run just so I can get used to running at race pace during a long run. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that again, I would probably incorporate that at the end of my second phase just to kind of start introducing them into more of the harder tempo thresh runs. So
Cool.
yeah,
That's so helpful. Well,
yeah.
okay, one more question on prepping for a half marathon. What is the best way to go about tapering for that? Like the week before, 2 weeks before?
Yeah. So I would say two weeks. You want to taper. Running is basically 2 weeks is a good taper time. For Ironman, I always say 3 weeks. Some people
That's
try
good.
to use 2 weeks, but I just don't think that's long enough of recovery for the massive miles that you have to put in for that. And it's just the fatigue is so much greater. But yeah, I would say for the half marathon 2 week taper. So like you would do your last hard run basically on the Saturday 2 weeks out, and then the next week you would do a 5 miler, and then the next week you would do the race,
Cool.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that would be the way to do it. And then the goal is to be like on your first taper week, you should be at maybe 60% of your overall, 70% of your overall miles of where you were on your peak week. And then on your rest week, those are just fill in runs, really just to kind of keep yourself moving. Don't even look at what your mileage is that week, base it on how you feel. Because in the middle of that week, you should feel like you're antsy and you just want to go run. That's the greatest feeling in the world because that means you're ready to race. And if you're not feeling that way, then something got skewed up along the way. But yeah.
Mm.
And I just say, don't get too tempted and then go out and run 6 or 7 miles, right? Because you feel like you have to go run today. That's not going to help you either because your whole point is rebuilding and restoring and re-energizing everything that you've just dumped out in your last block of training, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's time to heal. And now it's time for us to just be patient, trust our fitness. You're not going to lose anything. I mean, you're still doing 70% the week before, right? You're just losing all your intensity. I would say no speed on that second week out, no speed, just do the miles.
Yeah.
No speed at all. Let yourself heal the tendons and the muscles and all the little aches and pains that you're probably going to have that last week going into the final long, hard run. And then that race week again is just where you're just trying to set your brain of, okay, now I'm ready to run. I'm ready. Oh, I'm going to freaking crush this run. And just put in a 5 mile easy run maybe on Monday, a 5 easy on Wednesday, and I always do a shakeout run the day before the race. If it's a Saturday race, then on Friday, I'll just go do a really quick 3 mile shakeout run where it'll be super slow, but then I'll add maybe 3 or 4 1 minute pickups where I'll do an acceleration up just slightly faster than my race goal pace, just so I can get my anaerobic moving again and the blood moving through the legs. And then as soon as I feel like, oh, that's enough, then I shut it right back down and I'm done. Right. So, yeah, it's just all about movement the last week. It's nothing about what you're losing or what you're gaining on that week. It's just getting yourself prepared.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Oh, that makes me so excited. Thank you.
Ah,
It's gonna be awesome.
you are going to be amazing. I have no
Thank you.
doubt.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You have a great work ethic. You're a hard worker. And, I usually hate when people say, oh, yeah, you deserve that. But you can say that to people that deserve that. I will
Yeah.
say that that's the time that it's okay to say you deserve that. You know, you don't want to say that to somebody that that has slacked off and hasn't done the work and then came back and got a PR and a half marathon, but they didn't do the work for it. And you're like, oh yeah, you deserve that. No, 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 you didn't. You didn't deserve that. Like, you're a
Yeah.
total douche. You cheated. You cheated the system. Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
That's
Again, I
so
think
fair.
that's the work model that we have. I think that's our A personality where,
Yes.
we're gonna focus on something, we're gonna do the work for it. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, Tim, I have two more questions for you. The first one is, do you have any mental mantras that you tell yourself during the race or during training that keep you going, that keep you motivated?
I actually do. Like, I think probably the first one that I think is really, really important is that you got to take a step back and say, yes, I have a goal in this. There's no question about that. But also, don't be afraid to look around. Like, take some stuff in, even put a smile on your face for a second. Science shows that if you can put a smile on your face during a run, you're reducing your anxiety by 30 to 40% just by switching your brain to say, oh shoot, I can relax a little bit. Like, this is good. And if you can do that, then the miles start to seem a little easier, right? Because you're not holding on to all that anxiety and stress and just gotta hit this, gotta hit this, gotta hit this. So you just like can let some of that go. You still hit those marks, but you're letting it go because you're saying it's okay for me to just kind of take some of this in, right? Like, I don't have to just be so tunnel vision on this and not try to take some of the race stuff in and smile and maybe high five of volunteers you're going through an aid station or whatever that is, right? But smile.
Yeah.
There's science behind that. Time and time again, you see some of these elite runners now, especially some of these elite female runners that are doing these ultras, where they're smiling the whole freaking way through the races, right? And they're
Yeah.
breaking world record times, like literally crushing world record times right now. And she's smiling the whole entire race. And she says the same thing. She's like, it just reduces the pressure and the stress that I have on myself. And I find myself that I love running so much. I smile when I'm doing it. So that would be my first goal or advice, to just step back and just try to take it in. And if you can do that, kind of let some of that go.
Yeah.
Then when things really, really get hard, obviously because of my nonprofit, my head goes here a lot, is I fall back onto my gratitude of, my God, like, I am so capable. I have the choice. I'm the one that signed up to do this. Like, and I got the blessings to come here and do this today. And I'm gonna bitch about this right now because I'm hurting a little bit. Come on. Like, think of how lucky I am that I get to do this. Even though I get to suffer through these miles, I am so blessed and so lucky I get to do this today that, for me, that's where my head goes. But, when you run with athletes that will never be able to stand up on their own when they get out of bed in the morning, right? Like, never be able to use the bathroom by themselves, never be able to feed themselves. You fall a little more on gratitude, I think, because you're around that a lot more. And so for me, that's changed how I run nowadays. There's not a day that I feel like I'm not blessed to be able to just run out that door at any time I want and say that I get to go for a run today. And if I choose to do a race, then that blessing is tenfold, because that means, one, I was healthy enough to get to that starting line to be there, right? And I
Yeah.
put it on my training and I'm still there. So that's 90% of the win. It's just to be standing on that starting line. And the 10% is just taking it all in and knowing how grateful you are that you get to be here for today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Smiling, taking the anxiety off, gratitude. You're lucky to be there. That's awesome. And hard work works. I think about that all the time. Yeah, that you say
Yeah.
that.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but you can even say that during a race. You can say hard work works, but when your brain is saying, "Oh, I can't hold this anymore," right? Just got to have something deeper than that. And that's when I go to Patrick and I see him laying in the bed and know that he'll never be able to sit up and stand up. That's where my brain goes, and I'll be like, "Shit, I'm going to complain about a little pain out here. Are you kidding me right now?" And everybody has their thing, you know.
Hmm.
I had a friend that she used to help a lot of the African children. So her brain would always go to, when she was doing ultra races, is I'm I'm going to complain about suffering out here in the middle of this trail run that I got to sign up for and that I get to do when they don't have food on their table tonight. Like, are you serious right now? And so
Yeah,
for her, that's where she would always go during the race. I always thought that was really interesting. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, just the gratitude she had in that respect was huge. But you definitely have to have your own thing and figure out what that is. I do
yeah,
Ironman race talks before, when we used to have Ironman Arizona every year. And, my race talk always used to incorporate right at the very start is, I hope that you have a reason why you're here today. Like, why are you doing this race? Right. And if you know why you're doing this race, then when things get really hard, you have to fall back onto, why are you doing this race? And then once you figure that out, then you have to figure out, when things really get hard, how are you going to get through those? Like, what's going to really pull you through that phase, right? Like, maybe it's you have a sick mom or dad, or maybe you lost a mom or dad, right? And you're dedicating this to them, right? And you know that you want to put everything out to them because you're attributing it to them, right? There's so many different things and so many personal reasons that people should have that focus on what that should be for them. And it'll never be the same. It shouldn't be the same.
totally.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Tim, my last question for you that I get to ask everybody that comes on the podcast is, what does 1% healthier mean to you?
Oh, yes. So, when I read that quote from you on your Instagram page, like, for me, just seeing that 1% better every single day, just if I can just be 1% better every day, no matter what that is, maybe it's doing dishes 1% better every day. Because Lord knows I walk by that sink and there's dirty dishes in there, right? It's just that 1% better, and it can be anything to me. So when I hear you say 1%, like, it's being 1% better in everything that you do in your life, and it doesn't have to be just attributed to exercise related stuff. It can be anything in your life. And they say, you can stockpile enough 1%, right, along the way, you're going to be an expert in the end of it,
So
right?
true. Hmm.
Yeah, so I love that philosophy. I love the way that you think, and I think that's why I gravitated towards you at Track so quickly, because I read that online and I'm like, God, I love that. Holy crap, why didn't I think of that? Like, yeah, it's just an amazing, amazing rule. So you keep running with that, girl.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being on the podcast and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and experience and expertise. This has been so helpful. I took like a page of notes right here.
All
So
right, good.
hopefully all the listeners also benefit and learn from and can prepare better for their running and get faster and everything. So again, thank you for being here. And for the listeners that are wanting to connect with you further, where can they find you online? Or if they're in Arizona, where can they come train with you? Let them know.
Yeah. So, yep. So it's actually Excel and Beyond Coaching, and you can find it excelbeyondcoaching.com. So pretty easy. I don't say put the and in there on the website. And you can just basically question me anytime you want on the website. There's a question thing on there that you can just put it on there. And of course, I'll respond pretty quickly. I'm more onto if you message me on Facebook or Instagram or stuff, I'm really pretty good about responding on those within 24 hours. I try to get to all those when I can. And you can, I would say if the best bet is just do it under my own name, Timothy Bolen, Bolen, and just friend request me. And, you got questions, just shoot me any of your questions. I'm more than happy to help. Yeah.
Thank
And
you so much.
if you're in Phoenix, we do track workouts for free on Wednesdays at Marcus Deniza High School at 5 a.m. That's where we met. And I'm so grateful for that. We have 70 runners now that pretty much come on a regular basis, which is super cool. And I welcome newbies any day of the week.
Yeah, that's awesome. Seriously, if you guys are in Phoenix, you have to go to the track. It was my favorite thing ever. So I'll put the
Yeah.
link to Excel Beyond Coaching in the description, and Timothy, your social medias as well, so that people
Okay.
can find you and connect with you. And again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You're the best.
Of course, you're welcome.
Nothing but the best for you.
Thank you, and same to you, Tim. Thank you for sharing your time and wisdom, and thank you to the listener for being here and being a part of the 1% Healthier community. If you learned from this podcast, leave a comment down below on Spotify or YouTube and share some of your takeaways and share and show some of your love with Tim. And if you align with the 1% Healthier mission and you're wanting to continue to get better every day, physically, mentally, spiritually, please follow the podcast on the platform that you're listening on and leave a 5-star rating and review. I really appreciate the support and want to continue to support you. So keep stacking days, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.